I renovated this apartment using mostly other people's scraps, natural materials, DIY fabrication, and scavenging demolitions.
First, by taking down these two walls.
If you ever plan to redo your flat or even build a house, then the 5 tips that make up this video will prove useful. As for this project, they helped me to save up to 8 to 12,000 euros. And that's a lot of euros. Use stuff you already have or ask neighbors. First thing I had to scavenge were already these posts. I needed them before cutting the wall. The idea is to reinforce the wall so that the second floor wouldn't collapse. I got the timber from my friend Ilmar, but to get them, I had to first build this insane ass bike trailer. It's really the most obvious way to save those euros. People have DIY'd and renovated their apartments before you, and almost everyone has some leftover. They maybe suspect that, one day, maybe I'll need it, maybe one day. Never, they never do. Asking friends and neighbors, I was able to get either for free or just few bucks loads of stuff for this project like concrete, timber, pipes, hydro insulation, and more. I dismantled the floor and figured that
Joists were sitting just on the dirt floor, which is kind of ridiculous, but it is what it is. So obviously I'm gonna have to either get or build new joists, but before that,
digging! That took me 18 hours. Digging was a tough job. I wheelbarrowed about 8 cube meters of dirt. And I could just dump it all in the garden. You see, building with natural materials. One beautiful day you can then just dump it in the garden. But that's a tip number 3. Now let me get to the tip number 2. To stick to the first step, I wanted to use the logs from the demolition to build the joists. Right opposite of the apartment building is an abandoned house that local community tried to save, but they didn't have enough money to finish
which means
it.
that there should be still a lot of material to scavenge.
I met with Andrus, who led the community project, and made a deal for some wood. Then I could start to sandwich the house leftovers and logs from my walls. Soon I realized that it was a pretty shit solution. Then a sort of unfortunate fortune struck. One evening I was on my way home and noticed something crazy. School, literally 100 meters away from the house, is also being renovated. And they are throwing all the wooden floors, including the joists. It is unfortunate because look at it, so much wood will just go to waste. I called to the boss whose number I conveniently found on his giant billboard whether I could have some, and he was like, sure, go for it. Asking the city what they are destroying and dumpster diving. Like, the worst bit is that it wouldn't have been so difficult to instruct the guys to, sort the material and create several piles. It wouldn't have to be orderly, just like floorboards, this kind of stuff. Like, it would have then make it so much easier to reutilize it for people to actually come and, take the wood. But like this, it's just impossible. I loaded up as much as I could, and with 5 runs back and forth with my bike, obviously, I got everything I needed. Cars are for weaklings, by the way.
This wood right here in a shop for normal humans is about this much money. Insane.
With the timber from the school, it was much easier to make the joists. My neighbor happened to have these big-ass Soviet light concrete blocks that I built the footings from, and I used some stones from the garden as a foundation. See, no new concrete necessary. So environmentally friendly, actually. But also, I did save money on that again. And so I kept sandwiching, digging, tamping, and tamping.
Okay, so this is done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. It took me about 5 days. Okay, I spent 3 hours a day with the children. But it was tough, man. I spent here every day 9 till 3. And then in the evenings, like 7 till 11, I did it. And it was tough. And the next section will be also very challenging.
Challenge was gonna be the installation of the floorboards. But first, the subfloor. Materials from that I got from the house. So if my calculations are right, then this project so far, if I don't count the threaded bars, screws, definitely not beers, and my own time, it was altogether 0 euros.
which is a good amount of euros.
Now to the tip itself. City and state governments constantly renovate their buildings. And if you take into account, at least in Europe, that they now have to comply with all sorts of green and circular action plans, then they have to at least pretend that, oh, we are so sorry, demolishing this building, it goes all too dumb. And that's your chance for leverage. You can step in and say, oh, dear city, I can save this burden from you. I can save those CO2s for you. Let me have that stuff. I mean, in my case, I didn't really have to call to anyone, but if the builders would have been a bit funny about giving it away, then I would have just phoned to someone who is responsible for all the green stuff in our municipality, create some pressure, and surely they would have been happy to give it to me. Dumpster diving. My wife's grandpa, N, who's been helping me, by the way, the entire time, is a chronic scavenger. So much so that even without needing it, about a year ago, he dumpster dived 70 of these fiberglass plates from a local museum dumpster. You never know. And so we use them to insulate the floor, together with some leftover eco wool from Ilmar's. Now to the floorboards.
Look at me, I have a helmet. I got it from the construction guys. Basically, I asked the demolition boss if I could be the one who's demolishing one of the classrooms, and he said, all right. So I will now go and try to save some floorboards from one of the classrooms myself.
I uncovered floors in 3 different classrooms, and the original floorboards underneath would have been salvageable, but I just didn't have the time. So I had to spend first real money on new floorboards. I lost most of the footage installing the floorboards. It's not the only footage I lost. So here are a few shots. We managed well. As I mentioned, most of the footage that I was gonna illustrate the next point on is lost. But I'll try to be creative, okay? Use my editing wizardry and other people's footage to help you to connect my words with pictures in your brain. First, with little help, I took down the plasterboards of this wall and filled the gaps with PVA glue, sand dust and pulverized clay mixture. It is an amazing, all-natural, almost filler. That again cost me just about 20 euros for the glue. Main job now was to cover the posts and also the parts of the wall that were going to be the kitchen. Most mortals here would go for plasterboards, so did I partially, but I used cop and clay plaster. If bought from store, it can be pretty expensive, but if you mix it yourself, it is dirt cheap. You see what I did there? Dirt cheap. The clay I got from Facebook Marketplace for free, and then some leftovers from oven that we built this year in one community garden. But for this all-natural plaster, you need mainly a lot of sand. And as you have noticed, I don't have an automobile. Cars are for losers after all, right? But again, lucky me, next to the house they were about to start a new development. And just behind the fence where I went to pee, by the way, every day, you needed to know that, you can see in here this huge pile of sand. So I called the developer if I could have some, and they were like, sure. Whatever. First I plastered the wall, for that I got this mesh from Facebook Marketplace. Then mixed 5 parts sand, 1 part clay and some finely cut straw. Then mix thoroughly till you have consistency of a yogurt, sour cream. It's better to let it stay overnight for the clay to dissolve. It gets more like plasticky and sticky. You first apply the plaster, then wait for like 3 hours, and then you go over it with a wet sponge, making circular movements. The posts I did cover with plasterboards and then plastered over it. But for the more tricky parts, I made my own mesh, using nails, wires, pieces of wood and whatnot for the cob to stick on. Right. The cob. You take a tarpaulin, you dump 1 part clay, 1 part sand, well, depends on the clay, 1 part straw, or a bit more, water, and then you dance on it to smush it with your bare feet. Look at those happy hippies. This could be you. Imagine that. This could be you. This was I, but you won't see me doing it, but it was fun. And with that, I copped over all the places I didn't use the plasterboard. And then I made the fire in the middle of summer to fasten the process of the clay drying so I could paint over the walls. Tip 4. Facebook Marketplace/free cycle groups. Once dry, I started to paint the whole thing white. For a bit there, I was gonna make my own paint from, dirt and some chemicals, but that would be crazy, right? Instead, I want to replace where all things are. Facebook Marketplace. From the Marketplace, I got the paint, faucet, the mesh, grout for the tiles, and so much more. But the real tip here is that Beyond Facebook Marketplace, there, in the depths of the internet, there are things as mailing lists, where people in ancient times used to communicate and to share things. And they are still active. They are usually called free cycle, whatever city where you are. You can get a lot of stuff for free there. For instance, I got these very fancy tiles for the bathroom later, just for a 6-pack. That's a good deal. Extra tip for you there, hydro insulation is very important. When Grandpa was doing the bathroom 12 years ago, he applied only a single layer of it. That didn't do it. When I was demolishing the bathroom, the plasterboards and even the studs behind were completely rotten. Completely. I think Anne felt a bit responsible, so he took the renovation of the bathroom on himself. He took out the rotten bits and reinforced the whole thing with concrete blocks, which we then attached new plasterboards on. Once that was done, I applied not 1, not 2, not 3, but 3 layers of hydro insulation, and then tiled the bathroom with the tiles I got for the 6-pack and some leftovers from our workshop. Number 5. Do it yourself. I wanted to make a fancy backsplash for the place where the kitchen sink is gonna go. To make a mosaic, find a kitchen cabinet which surface area matches exactly the size of the mosaic you desire to make. When you're rescuing the cabinets, obviously with your bicycle, make sure to take a 4-year-old child with you to film the experience. Once at site, place baking paper on top of the cabinet, then plastering mesh, and then make your mosaic gluing pieces with very hot glue. Guess what? I also used the kitchen cabinets. So resourceful, right? But they were kind of ugly, so I hustled some factory leftover plywood for cheap and made the doors myself. Then I bought a new surface desk and extended the thing with these tiles and some plywood. This tip is really about rewiring your brain, not to be consumer, but a creator, because we live in a society. And I mean, YouTube is full of like how-tos, basically how to do anything, and it's completely worth it. First, money-wise, because if I would have bought these cabinets to fit this space, they would have been, I don't know, whatever, 800 euros, but like this, it was just about 100. And second, I really believe that trying to do things yourself from the ground up, there is more to you. You know that you are capable of doing things. Plus you save the money. Talking of saving money, mere mortals here would have probably hired a guy that would buy stuff from the shop, and that would have been about 12,000 euros. I spent roughly 2,782 euros. Now lacquering the floor, finishing touches, and there you have it. Maybe now you feel inspired to go and redo your own little nest. Or maybe you are even more inspired, so much so that you're gonna meet with your local municipal representatives and together write an EU Commission funding proposal to set up a municipal center where for small reimbursements, citizens and companies can give their building material leftovers and others can then use them for their sustainable renovation. Maybe. Or go and watch this video right here where I did what? I built an office under a bridge. That sounds like an amazing adventure to jump into. Right? Thanks for watching.